Every grocery store in America operates on a 3-day supply chain. 3 days. That's not a conspiracy. That's logistics. The food on those shelves wasn't grown in your town. Most of it wasn't grown in your state. A lot of it wasn't even grown in your country. It was shipped on trucks, from warehouses, from distribution centers, from farms and factories hundreds or thousands of miles away. And every link in that chain runs on fuel, electricity, and a financial system that assumes tomorrow works the same as today. Now imagine one of those links breaks. Not a hurricane that knocks out power for a week, not a trucker strike that delays things for a few days. I mean breaks. Grid failure, fuel shortage, banking disruption, currency collapse. Pick your scenario. The shelves go empty in 72 hours, and they stay empty. What do you eat on day 4? Day 40? Day 400? Most people don't have an answer. They've got maybe a week of canned food in the pantry, maybe a bag of rice, maybe a garden out back with some tomatoes and basil that looks great on Instagram, but wouldn't keep a grown adult alive for 2 weeks. And that's the problem. The survival gardening advice most people follow is based on hobby gardening. Raised beds, heirloom seeds, cute little squash plants. None of that is real food security. Real food security is a system of plants that produces calories, protein, vitamins, and minerals every single year, without you buying seeds, without you buying fertilizer, without you depending on a single thing from the outside world. That's what this video is. 5 plants. Just 5. But these 5 cover your caloric base, your protein needs, your micronutrient gaps, and your soil fertility. And 3 of them you plant once and never replant again. If you're still watching this channel, you already know things are fragile. So hit subscribe now, because I'm about to give you the exact blueprint that keeps your family fed when the people who didn't prepare are standing in lines that don't move, for stores that don't restock, in a system that stopped working. Let's go. Number 5. Cattail. The supermarket hiding in every ditch in America. I almost didn't include this one. Not because it doesn't belong. It absolutely belongs. But because most people hear cattail and think of that brown fuzzy thing on a stick near a pond. They don't think food. And that's exactly why it's on this list. Because while everyone else is panicking about where to find calories, you're going to walk to the nearest pond, creek, marsh, drainage ditch, or roadside wetland and harvest more food than most backyard gardens produce in a month. Every single part of a cattail is edible. Every part. The roots are dense with starch. You pull them up, peel them, and you've got something that looks and cooks like a potato. Around 200 calories per pound of raw root. Dry it, pound it into flour, and you've got a carbohydrate base for bread, pancakes, porridge, whatever you need. The young shoots that come up in spring taste like asparagus. You peel back the outer leaves, eat the tender core raw or cooked. The immature flower heads, the green ones before they go brown, you boil them and eat them like corn on the cob. That's not a metaphor. They literally look like miniature corn, and you eat them the same way. And the pollen. This is the one nobody talks about. In early summer, cattail pollen is so abundant, you can shake it off the flower heads into a bag. That pollen is a high-protein flour substitute. You mix it 50/50 with regular flour, or use it straight in flatbreads. 1 acre of cattails produces roughly 6,500 pounds of rhizome flour per year. That number comes from research conducted decades ago, and it's been largely ignored since. Think about that. 6,500 pounds of starchy flour from a plant that nobody planted, nobody watered, nobody fertilized, and nobody is harvesting right now. It's just sitting there. In 30,000 years of human history on this continent, cattails were a primary food source for indigenous peoples across North America. They knew. We forgot. You don't even need to plant cattails. They're already growing within a mile of most people reading this. But if you want a dedicated patch, transplant a few rhizomes to any wet area on your property. A pond edge, a rain garden, a low spot that stays soggy. They'll establish in one season and spread aggressively from there. Cattail is the food source that's been right under your nose your entire life. You just never look down. Number 4. Siberian pea shrub, the nitrogen-fixing protein hedge that survives anything. Here's the biggest gap in most survival gardens. Protein. You can grow potatoes, you can grow squash, you can grow greens all day long. But without a reliable source of protein, you're running on carbohydrates and water, and your body starts breaking down muscle tissue to get what it needs. That's not theoretical, that's basic nutrition. And in a long-term grid-down scenario, protein is the thing that separates the people who stay strong from the people who get weak, get sick, and stop being able to work. Caragana arborescens, Siberian pea shrub. Most Americans have never heard of it, but across Siberia, Mongolia, and northern China, this plant has kept people and livestock alive through conditions that would kill every crop in your garden. It produces small, edible, pea-like seeds every year. The seeds are roughly 36% protein by dry weight. Read that number again, 36%. That's higher than lentils, higher than chickpeas, higher than most beans you'd buy at the store, and it produces those seeds reliably for 50 years or more once established. But here's what makes the Siberian pea shrub a cheat code for survival. It's a nitrogen fixer. Its roots form a symbiotic relationship with bacteria that pull nitrogen directly out of the atmosphere and convert it into a form that plants can use. That means it's not just feeding you, it's feeding your soil. Everything you plant near it grows better. Your fruit trees grow faster, your greens grow darker and more nutrient dense. Your soil gets richer every single year instead of getting depleted. You're not losing fertility, you're building it, without buying a single bag of fertilizer. It grows in zones 2 through 7, tolerates -40 degrees Fahrenheit, handles drought, handles poor soil, handles full sun or partial shade. Grows 8 to 12 feet tall and can be pruned into a dense hedge that doubles as a windbreak, a living fence, or a privacy screen. You plant it around the perimeter of your food garden, and it does 3 jobs at once: protein production, soil building, wind protection. That's infrastructure, not gardening. Number 3. Moringa, the miracle tree the developing world already depends on. This is the one most of you haven't heard of. And honestly, once you hear the numbers, you're going to wonder why nobody in the survival space is talking about it. Because this plant solves the problem that kills people in every prolonged food crisis in history. Not starvation exactly. Malnutrition. You can have enough calories and still die because your body isn't getting the vitamins and minerals it needs to keep your immune system running, your bones intact, and your organs functioning. That's what happens in real famines. People eat rice and bread and grain, and they still waste away because micronutrient deficiency destroys the body from the inside out. Moringa oleifera. They call it the miracle tree, and for once, the nickname isn't hype. Gram for gram, moringa leaves contain 7 times the vitamin C of oranges, 4 times the calcium of milk, 3 times the potassium of bananas, 2 times the protein of yogurt, and 25 times the iron of spinach. Those aren't marketing claims from some supplement company. Those are nutritional analyses published in peer-reviewed research. The World Health Organization, UNICEF, and dozens of NGOs actively distribute moringa in sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, and Central America specifically to combat childhood malnutrition. It works. It's not a superfood trend. It's a famine intervention tool that's been deployed for decades. Now here's the part that matters for you. Moringa grows fast, absurdly fast. We're talking 15 to 20 feet in a single year. You can harvest the leaves continuously. Cut it back hard and it regrows from the stump. In tropical and subtropical climates, zones 9 through 13, it grows as a perennial tree. In colder zones, you grow it as an annual, plant it after last frost, and it still reaches 6 to 10 feet in one season, producing harvestable leaves within 60 days of planting. The leaves dry easily. Spread them on a screen in the shade for 2 to 3 days, crumble them into powder, and you've got a shelf-stable nutritional supplement that lasts over a year. A tablespoon of moringa powder in your daily meal covers micronutrient gaps that would otherwise leave you vulnerable to scurvy, anemia, bone loss, and immune collapse. You can grow it in poor soil. It actually prefers well-drained, sandy soil that most other crops hate. It tolerates drought once established, and the seeds, the pods, and the roots are all edible too. If you're in a warm climate, plant this tree yesterday. If you're in a cold climate, start seeds indoors 6 weeks before last frost and transplant out. Treat it like the most important annual you've ever grown. Because when the stores are empty and you're eating rice and beans for the 8th week in a row, Moringa powder is the difference between holding together and falling apart. Number 2, sunchokes, the underground calorie factory that never stops producing. You need calories. That's the baseline. Before protein, before vitamins, before everything else, your body needs raw energy just to keep going. An adult doing physical labor in a survival situation burns 2,500 to 3,500 calories a day. You're not sitting at a desk. You're hauling water, chopping wood, digging, building, repairing, guarding, and every calorie you burn has to come from somewhere. Sunchokes, Jerusalem artichokes, Helianthus tuberosus. Whatever you want to call them, they are the most reliable calorie-producing plant you can grow with the least amount of effort, and it's not close. You plant one tuber in spring. By fall, that single tuber has multiplied into 5 to 10 pounds of new tubers underground. Those tubers are roughly 400 calories per pound, raw. So, a single plant gives you 2,000 to 4,000 calories. Now scale that. A 10 by 10 plot, maybe 25 plants, could yield 125 to 250 pounds of tubers in a single season. That's 50,000 to 100,000 calories from a space the size of a parking spot. No fertilizer, no irrigation in most climates, no pest control, no replanting. Because here's the key thing about sunchokes. You never harvest all of them. You leave a few tubers in the ground, and they come back next year, and the year after, and the year after that. They don't just come back. They spread, aggressively, to the point where most gardening websites warn you about them like they're a problem. In a survival scenario, aggressive self-spreading is not a problem. That's the whole point. The tubers store in the ground all winter. No root cellar, no canning, no processing. The soil is your refrigerator. When you need food, you dig. When you don't need food, you leave them. They're fine either way. They grow in zones 3 through 9. Full sun to partial shade. Clay soil, sandy soil, rocky soil, rich soil. They don't care. They grow 6 to 10 feet tall with bright yellow flowers that attract pollinators, which helps everything else in your garden. The one thing most people bring up is the inulin issue. Sunchokes are high in inulin, a carbohydrate that can cause gas and digestive discomfort if you eat too much too fast. Here's the fix. Start slow. Let your gut bacteria adjust over a week or two. Cook them thoroughly. Roasting, boiling, or fermenting breaks down the inulin significantly. And honestly, in a real food crisis, a little digestive adjustment is not the problem you're worried about. You're worried about where your next 3,000 calories are coming from. Sunchokes answer that question permanently. Number 1, American groundnut. The native protein powerhouse that nobody knows about. If I could only plant one thing, knowing that the grocery stores were gone forever, this is what I'd plant. Not because it's the highest calorie producer. Sunchokes win that. Not because it has the best micronutrient profile. Moringa wins that. But because American groundnut does something almost no other plant does. It gives you real, substantial protein from a perennial root crop that requires zero maintenance, fixes nitrogen into your soil, and has been feeding people on this continent for thousands of years. Apios americana, American groundnut. The tubers are 15 to 17% protein by dry weight. That's not a typo. For a root crop, that number is unheard of. Potatoes are about 2% protein. Sweet potatoes are about 5%. Cassava is less than 1%. Groundnut is in a category by itself. You're looking at a tuber that gives you both the caloric base of a starchy root and the protein content of a legume in one plant from one harvest. It's a climbing vine native to eastern North America, found naturally from Ontario to Florida and west to the Great Plains. It grows along streams, in forest edges, in moist meadows. Indigenous peoples across the continent cultivated it as a staple food long before European contact. Some historians believe it was one of the foods that kept the Pilgrims alive during their first winters, taught to them by the Wampanoag, and then it was systematically replaced by European crops and essentially forgotten. Here's how you grow it. Plant tubers in spring after last frost, 4 to 6 inches deep, about 12 inches apart. Give it something to climb, a trellis, a fence, even a dead tree. It wants partial shade to full sun and consistently moist soil. It won't tolerate dry conditions the way sunchokes do, so pair it with a rain garden, a swale, or plant it near your water source. First-year tubers are small, second year, bigger. By year 3, you're harvesting tubers the size of small potatoes, and the plant is spreading via underground stolons, creating new plants on its own. You cook them like potatoes, boil, roast, fry. The flavor is described as a cross between a potato and a peanut. They're denser and nuttier than a regular potato. The protein means your body is getting something that potatoes, no matter how many you eat, simply cannot provide. And because it's a legume, it fixes atmospheric nitrogen into the soil through its root nodules, feeding the microbiology underground and building long-term fertility without a single input from you. This is the plant that changes the math. With sunchokes, you've got calories. With Moringa, you've got vitamins and minerals. With cattails, you've got a free carbohydrate base growing wild. With Siberian pea shrub, you've got protein and soil building. But American groundnut ties it all together. It gives you the single most nutritionally complete perennial root crop on the continent. It fills the protein gap that every other survival garden leaves wide open. And it's native. It evolved here. It wants to grow here. You're not fighting your climate. You're working with it. 5 plants. That's it. Cattail for free carbohydrates from every waterway in North America. Siberian pea shrub for protein, nitrogen fixation, and a living hedge that produces for 50 years. Moringa, for the micronutrient safety net that prevents your body from breaking down. Sunchokes for a calorie base so aggressive it spreads on its own and stores in the ground all winter. And American groundnut for the perennial protein source that indigenous peoples built entire food systems around before it was erased from our memory. You don't need 50 crops. You don't need a farm. You don't need a greenhouse or a tractor or a seed catalog. You need 5 plants, a patch of dirt, and the willingness to start before everyone else figures out what you already know. The grocery store is not a guarantee. It never was. It's a convenience that works until it doesn't. And when it doesn't, the only people eating are the ones who already planted. Start this weekend. Not next month. Not next spring. This weekend. Because these plants need time to establish, and time is the one thing you cannot buy after the supply chain breaks. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.